Hey friends, welcome back to Narrative Writing. Today we're going to learn about how to add sensory details to our writing. So we're going to talk a little bit about what sensory details are and what it does to our writing. So before we start, let's do a quick little flashback about what we did last week. Last week we learned how to add dialogue to our personal narratives. Remember, dialogue is when two people are talking. We added dialogue to make our writing more engaging or exciting. We also focused in on how to edit and revise our writing. We wanted to make sure that our writing was able to be read by someone else. We also wanted to make sure that they were engaged by what we were reading. This week we are going to work on adding in more detail to our writing. We'll be learning how to add sensory details. So let's go over our target. Our first target is, I can define the different types of sensory details. So this means that we'll be able to define or explain to someone else what sensory details are. Sensory details deal with our 5 senses, and you'll learn how to add those types of details to your writing today. Our second target is, I can determine what sensory detail is being used in a sentence. So we'll have some practice time where we'll be able to look at different paragraphs and determine which sensory detail is being used. So you might be thinking, what is a sensory detail? Well, sensory details help us show, not tell, what we're trying to write. This means that it allows other people to visualize what's happening in the story. So good writers use their senses to add lots of different details so the reader can visualize or picture what is happening. Here's an anchor chart that shows the different senses that we will use. We have sight, smell, taste, sound, and touch. Each of these types of senses should be used when you write. You want to describe what you're seeing. You want to describe if something smells good or if something smells bad. You want to be able to tell the reader what something tastes like. You're going to want to tell the reader what something sounds like. You're going to want to tell the reader how something feels when you touch it. So these are ways that the reader can really imagine what you're talking about or writing about. So we're going to use these details to make our writing more engaging. The first sensory detail we're going to talk about is taste. We're going to describe what something tastes like. When you use the sensory detail for taste, we want words that describe and allows the reader to know what something tasted like. So some examples are yummy, sour, bitter, or juicy. So these are words that you might see and you'll be like, oh, those are sensory details to let you imagine what something tasted like. We're going to look at a paragraph together and we're going to find where the author used the sensory detail of taste. So let's begin to read. The king and queen announced they would have a feast at the palace. The harvest had been great, and they wanted to share it with everyone. They invited all the people in the land. Emma was excited to think she could meet the king. Annie was happy to get dressed up and spend an evening with her friends. Sarah was looking forward to something else, though. Sarah couldn't wait to bite into the royal cook's famous sweet apple caramel pie. So think for a second in your head. Which sentence shows a sensory detail of taste? That's right. They used the detail sweet apple caramel pie to describe what the apple caramel pie is going to taste like. Can't you think about it in your head now? That the pie is going to be nice and sweet? When using sensory details, it really allows you to picture it in your mind. The next sensory detail that we'll be talking about is sound. You should describe how something sounded. To do this, you're going to add words that show the reader how the event or object sounded. So something could be loud, noisy, quiet, or something beautiful. So let's go ahead and read another paragraph. In the paragraph, we're going to find where the author is trying to show us what something sounded like. So let's go ahead and read. At 3:03 in the afternoon, the train in Arlington tooted its loud whistle. Alright, so right there I see that they're talking about a train and how it was tooting its loud whistle. So this first sentence is showing that the train is loud as it whistles. We can continue to read to see if there's any other examples. Everyone in town was excited about what mail the train might have brought. People lined up around the post office. Quan was hoping for a letter from his brother. Eve was waiting for a package from her father. That day, neither of them got what they were waiting for. Mrs. Leonard, on the other hand, received a big box of candy from California and shared it with them. Alright, after reading all of that, the only part where I can see that something is being described with a word about the sound is that first sentence. The train in Arlington tooted its loud whistle. So that shows that the train was very loud. Can't you picture the train in your head now? Me too. Next, we're going to talk about touch. We're going to describe how something feels. You want to use words that show how something feels when you touch it. So you can describe something as soft, fuzzy, sticky, or prickly. Those are just some examples. Let's go ahead and read this next paragraph to find a sentence that uses touch for their sensory detail. Chad and Billy were shopping for new clothes. Billy couldn't decide which shirt he wanted. Chad knew how to help his friend. Chad held up one of the shirts. Then he told Billy to buy that one because it was smooth, not scratchy. Billy nodded and thanked his friend. Chad smiled and thought to himself, I am the best and greatest shirt-picking man alive. So in this paragraph, go ahead and go back and look and see which one has the touch description or uses one of the words to describe what something touch or feels like. That's right. They use smooth, not scratchy. That makes you be able to picture what that shirt feels like when you touch it. Nice job. Now we're going to look at sight. Writers should describe how something looks. Use words that explain what something looks like. So this can be something like pretty, sparkled, bright, or shined. Again, we're going to read this paragraph and find where the author or the writer used sight to describe what something looks like. When Belle came to visit, she said that she had some exciting news. As soon as I saw the sparkling diamond ring on her finger, I knew what it was. Okay, right there, I saw something that probably describes what something looks like. You're right, it's the word sparkling. It's describing what the ring looked like. She was going to marry Kyle. We'd been expecting that, but there was more surprising news too. Belle and Kyle are going to move away and live in India. At first I was sad, but now I'm hoping I can visit them there. So the author or writer uses the word sparkling to describe what the diamond ring looks like. It makes you vision what the ring looks like and how it pops when it sparkles in the sun. Now we're going to talk about smell. The writer should describe how something smells. Add words that help the reader imagine how something smells, like delicious, burning, stinky, or sweet. Let's go ahead and find a description word or a detail that describes how something might smell. Bonnie's face twisted in disgust as she stared into an open refrigerator. A stink of old trash started to fill the kitchen. Okay, so I can already imagine that something was smelling bad in her fridge because it was a stink of old trash that started to fill the kitchen. So I can really put a picture in your mind of how something is smelling. They're using details to explain that it smells like old trash. But where was it coming from? She searched through the fridge and soon found the answer. There was a carton of leftover Chinese takeout from weeks ago. She should have thrown it away before she left for vacation. She couldn't remember what she was looking for in the fridge, but she knew she wasn't hungry anymore. So that sentence that tells about the stink of old trash really puts a bad picture in your head of how her fridge must be smelling. So the author or the writer used a detail to really put that image in your head. Now that we've gone through all 5 senses and talked about examples of how we can use those sensory details in our writing, we're going to try to do some of this on our own. But before we do that, let's go ahead and review our target. Our first target is, I can define the different types of sensory details. So our different types of sensory details are from our 5 senses. So taste, sight, touch, sound, and smell. Those are the 5 different senses. And those are the different types of sensory details you can add to writing. Our second target was, I can determine what sensory detail is being used in a sentence. So we went through for each different type of sense and determined the sensory detail that is being used in the sentence. So your job is going to be answering some questions and determining which type of sensory detail is being used. You will also be able to add sensory detail to a boring old sentence to make it more engaging or exciting for the reader. So now it's your turn. Answer the questions below. And then tomorrow we will use a graphic organizer to brainstorm a personal narrative and be sure to add sensory details. This will get us ready for our first draft. We want to make sure that we have sensory details to make our writing exciting. Friends, thank you for joining me and good luck on these sensory detail questions. Tomorrow, like I said, we will be having an outline to help us make sure we have sensory details in our first draft, and then we're going to write our first draft. All right, friends, you guys are going to do an awesome job today, and I cannot wait to see you tomorrow.